in true Pontius Pilate tradition. But Paul is no mug. He sensed that Festus was taking sides to suit his own ends, and so he had already endured 2 days' trickery at the hands of Felix, and Festus is no different. So Paul is a Roman citizen, and he reminds him that as the representative of Caesar, he reminds him of what both of them already know, that not even a procurator can make a free gift of an innocent man to a Jewish tribunal. And Paul, he's not standing on his high horse here, he's just making a defense, because this is a legitimate defense that God is going to use presently. So Paul exposes this conduct of Festus, because Paul simply stands up and says, no, I'm a Roman citizen and I'm not going to go to Jerusalem. But there's another reason why Paul didn't want to go to Jerusalem. It's because Jesus said, you've already been there. Cheer up, Paul, as you have borne witness in Jerusalem, so you shall bear witness for me at Rome. That was what motivated Paul, Jesus' words. So he stands up and he said, no, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to go back to Jerusalem. I'm not afraid to go to Jerusalem. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Rome next. I appeal to Caesar. That put the cat amongst the pigeons, because there are no charges against him, but he's appealed to Caesar. Now Festus has got to get some sort of statement ready. You can't send an innocent man to Caesar, say, try him. What are the charges? Oh, don't know what the charges are. So you see how God is in control of all this, because Festus has to get some advice from somebody who knows. So he calls for Herod Agrippa II, King of the Jews, great-grandson of Herod the Great. Not in royal line as King of the Jews, but friendly. His father had been friendly with Gaius Caligula, the Roman emperor, and he was friendly with Claudius. So this was an imperial appointment for Rome's ends, King of the Jews in Palestine. But he was a Jew, and now he would know. So Festus decides, okay, I'll ask Agrippa about this. So Agrippa is in Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea Philippi is way north of the Sea of Galilee. It's where Herod Agrippa had his court. He named the city after the Emperor Nero. So all of these Agrippa, these Herods, were in the pocket of the Roman emperor. The impact here is like a professor of theology, say in London Bible College, having the chance to put his case for Christ before the President of the United States, alongside the Prime Minister of Great Britain. That is the impact. That's what Paul's got here. A Roman procurator accompanied by a puppet Jewish king. So that's another opportunity. You see, God is in charge. He has made this appeal to Caesar into a positive move for the gospel without Paul being offensive. Paul, we'll see, doesn't lose his focus at all here. Paul actually is so in charge. This defense, his fullest defense, has been described as a noble defense where he obeys all the protocols, all the courtesies, and just proclaims Jesus Christ to the assembled group. So, verse 13, or first of all, Festus says, oh, you've appealed to Caesar, well, unto Caesar you go. And apparently in that phrase, Festus it's tinged with, you don't know what you've let yourself in for, mate. You've appealed to Caesar, and to Caesar you will go. There's a sort of an emphasis there which we can't sort of identify, but there's a sort of a threat. No more threat. Jesus said, you will bear witness of me in Rome. Roll on Rome, Paul is thinking. You got a problem? Well, God can use all these problems for blessing. But before then, the case is put to Agrippa. So let's just read from verse 13 onwards. Some day later, King Agrippa and Bernice, she's a wine, I'll tell you about Bernice in a minute. They came to Caesarea to pay a visit of welcome to Festus. After they'd been there several days, Festus explained Paul's situation to the king. There's a man here who was left a prisoner by Felix. When I went to Jerusalem, the Jewish chief priests and elders brought charges against him, asked me to condemn him. But I told them that the Romans are not in the habit of handing over any who are accused of a crime before they have met their accusers face to face, and have had the chance of defending themselves against the accusation. When they came here then, I lost no time, but on the very next day I sat in the judgment court and ordered the man to be brought in. His opponents stood up, but they did not accuse him of any of the evil crimes that I thought they would. Oh, that's interesting. So Festus knows that Paul is innocent. All they had, listen to this, all they had was some arguments with him about their own religion, about a man named Jesus, who had died, but Paul claims that he's alive. That was the issue. And we'll see that that is the issue that Paul is going to focus on when he talks to Agrippa later on, if you're still here. It's not as quick as I thought it was going to be, but you're very good. Stay where you are. So I gave him all orders. I asked Paul if he'd be willing to go to Jerusalem, but Paul appealed. He asked to be kept under guard and to let the emperor decide. So I gave orders for him to be kept under guard until I could send him to the emperor. Agrippa said to Festus, I would like to hear this man myself. Isn't there a verse in the Bible that says, always give a reason for the hope that is within you to whoever who asks? Paul is not saying, I want to speak to Agrippa. I appeal to Caesar. But on the way, he's going to have the chance to witness to Agrippa, who asks to hear about it. This is quite amazing. So relax. You can afford to relax and do the will of God. God is in charge here. Just live the Christian life with the power that God supplies, and God will open doors for you to speak the truth. It's only up to you. You'll hear him tomorrow, says Festus. So tomorrow comes, and Agrippa is presiding, while Festus, the Roman procurator, simply introduces Paul. So the next day, Agrippa and Bernice come with great pomp and ceremony. We all know what that is about. We've just gone through a lot of pomp and ceremony, and nothing wrong with a bit of pomp and ceremony. When you talk, it's very colourful. Well, it's a debate, isn't it? Says a lot wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. A lot wrong with it. They entered the audience hall with the military chiefs and the leading men. Wow, it's like Remembrance Day in St. Mike's, with Stuart Bell taking the role of the Apostle Paul, preaching to the dignitaries of Aberystwyth, but on a much bigger scale. All these people are here. Festus says, King Agrippa, you see this man? I've decided to send him to the emperor, but we've got nothing definite to write to him about. So I brought him here before you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after investigating his case, I may have something to write. For it seems unreasonable to me to send a prisoner without clearly indicating the charges against him. Now Agrippa was qualified to give Paul an understanding and a sympathetic hearing. But the scene, notice, has been set by Agrippa, not Paul. The king had asked to hear him, and so Paul speaks with official permission. Paul is not being bold, he's not sort of a bull at a gate. He is just responding to a question. His life had demanded an investigation. You have permission to speak on your own behalf. Paul stretched out his hand, defended him as follows. King Agrippa, I consider, this is the way to address a noble from King Agrippa. I consider myself fortunate that today I am to defend myself before you from all these things these Jews accuse me of, particularly since you know so well all the Jewish customs and disputes. I ask you then to listen to me with patience. He mentions his early life in Tarsus and Jerusalem. He says this was an open book to all the people. I lived as a Pharisee. I knew all the rules of the Pharisees. I played the game to the full. I knew what to do and I did it. I'd become one of the leaders of the sect. So he's not a subversive man. He's not a crank. In fact, the occasion of his trials concerned a particular and even-handed interpretation of all the Jewish scriptures. He says, I'm standing here to be tried because the hope I have in the promise that God made to our ancestors. The very thing that our 12 tribes who serve God day and night hope to receive as they worship God day and night. It's because of this hope that I am being accused by the Jews. Now Paul's interpretation of that hope had got him into trouble, because his interpretation of that hope was that all the promises of the Old Testament were not given to the nation of Israel per se, but they were given to Messiah. Paul will say to the Galatians, and to Abraham and to his offspring the promises were made. And he will go on to say that the Bible doesn't say offsprings to say many descendants, but one offspring, which means Christ. So Abraham and Christ were given the promises, the Messiah. So that all the promises of the Old Testament are fulfilled not in what God does for the church or for the Jews, but for what God does through Messiah. And so the Messianic theme is the one to interpret the Old Testament. And so he's talking to Agrippa, and then in true oratorical style, like I'm talking to Ken over there, say Ken is Agrippa. And I'm talking to Ken, and then I turn it, why should it be thought incredible for you to think that God can't raise the dead? And he goes back to Agrippa. That's the key issue, you see, because Festus has already said that to Agrippa in private. All they got is arguments about a man, Jesus, who died, but Paul says he was alive. And Paul wants to say, why do you think it's incredible? Before they can answer it, he's back talking to King Agrippa over there. It's brilliant. You read it for yourself when you get home. Now, Paul summarized his past. He says, you see, why should it be thought God can raise the dead? Paul's not moving off the point. This is the core issue. Jesus Christ is alive. Is he or not? Was he raised from the dead? If he was, did he die later? Is Jesus Christ alive today or not? Well, Paul is in no doubt. He's in no doubt. I myself, I thought I should do everything I could against the cause of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. So I went to Jerusalem, I went to foreign cities. I went actually as the official representative of that, the chief priests. Their predecessors. I went for them. I went to Damascus. As well as going to Damascus, that what happened was a light brighter than the sun shone around me, blinded me, wrecked all my plans, couldn't do any more, couldn't go any further. And I heard this voice, and it was